Digital entrepreneurs, listen up. Welcome to the e-commerce edge with Phil Dubois, where we explore the cutting edge of e-commerce strategies to help you scale your online business.
Welcome to another session of the e-commerce edge. I'm Phil Dubois, and I'm joined with my partner, Kevin Jampole. And today we are interviewing Cody Pollard. Cody's been on the agency side, helping small and mid-sized businesses scale in the e-commerce space, and the VP of Marketing and Business Development for a brand with revenue in the $2 million range. Cody's a self-described data wank with a passion for helping companies, brands with under $1 million in revenue scale. So why does following the profitably scaling e-commerce framework really matter? Because this is a stage where making the leap is more than just a commitment and a love of product. Cody, you've said at this stage can be make or break. Why is it so difficult for brands in this range of 500 million or 500,000 to $1 million? Why is it so challenging for them to move past this range?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on the podcast, on Earth, and really great to kind of hang out with you guys here. To answer your question, biggest thing that I've seen with a lot of brands that, start to get to 500,000, a million, even beyond is a lot of businesses, they start out with a really great idea. They scale pretty quickly through that kind of early adopter part. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the product adoption curve and all of that. And generally, when you're in that kind of early adopter stage, that's where you're 500,000 to 5 million in revenue. And that's where things kind of start to get real, because you might have found your niche. You might have found the people that are really resonating with your product. But in order to start going mainstream, that's where you start to hit growing pains. And that's where your internal processes start showing their cracks. You need to start scaling up. You need to start hiring staff. You need to make sure that you have the processes in place to train those staff, to make sure that they're happy, to make sure that you can keep scaling. And that's a really exciting time. And that's the part that I really enjoy, is being able to come into a great company with a great product and being able to kind of help build those processes, build that really strong foundation, making sure that CEOs, founders, everyone in the company really knows what your profitability numbers are, what you can spend on marketing to acquire customers, what you can spend to scale, how long it's going to take to get paid back whatever you do spend on marketing, what your cash flow looks like, all that fun stuff to make sure that you're really set up for success.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, maybe we can dig into a few of those pain points, especially at that early stage. I find that, I'll often hear clients talk about LTV and repeat purchases, because all of a sudden they've realized, gee, I've spent a lot of money on acquiring a client, but now I need to figure out what's driving those repeat purchases. That's something I see. But what are the biggest struggles you've seen in terms of rising acquisition costs, retention, the data that they're relying on? Maybe
Yeah,
it's operational, inefficiencies.
it's tricky out there right now. Both on like the B2B SaaS side, lead gen, and e-commerce. I'm not sure the best way to put this, but there's a lot of really great ideas out there. And when you have a great idea, it gets ripped off and knocked off super quick. People are going to start doing something similar. And that's no different with most businesses and most products. Like for instance, with AdAmplify, you guys have a really great iteration on an idea that's been around for a few years, but your version obviously has its differentiation and a lot of really great features, but you're just kind of reinventing what was already there with some of your competitors. And that's how a lot of new businesses start and scale. So there is kind of that baked in competition. And especially if you look at something like e-commerce. So say you have, let's say, a women's apparel brand. There are thousands of women's apparel brands out there. And when you're competing with them, you're competing for the same ad revenue. When it's in an auction system, those costs just keep going up to acquire the same customers, because there's only a finite number of women that you can appeal to within the continental, let's say North America or beyond, or wherever you're marketing to. So everyone's competing for the same pool. And when you're competing against other people, especially when you're competing against, let's say, Amazon, which has bottomless pockets to spend on advertising, your costs just keep going up and up and up. So making sure that you can kind of really differentiate yourself, focus a lot on storytelling, and making sure that you're creating something that's a true alternative definitely helps keep those costs down. And kind of optimizing your whole funnel means that your CACs stay low, you stay profitable, and you're able to scale.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, where do most founders underestimate the risk that they've taken on? And now, from what I'm hearing you just say, a component of that is the competition, which is driving up acquisition costs and that.
Yeah. Yeah. A
And
lot
what
of
else?
it's competition, but a lot of it too is just underestimating, yeah, again, how soon your cash is going to come back to you. So let's say let's say we have a women's apparel company, because that's a pretty easy example. Your average order value is $100. It costs you $40 to acquire that new customer. Your cost of goods sold is about 30% on that, and your other admin and everything else is about 20%.
Right.
Looking at that model, you've got a built-in, like, that initial order value, you're profitable. But say somebody comes in and only purchases, say, $80, you didn't make your money back on that order. You've lost $10. And the average is great of $100, but getting that up to, say, 200, then all of a sudden you have that extra, I can't even remember what the ratios work out to be, but let's say you have an extra $40 off that order that you can then turn into growing, and you get all your money back, and that's how you scale. But there's a lot of companies out there that get investment, that start trying to get on a rocket ship. And I see it a lot with venture capital firms where they come in and say, oh, we want 40, 50, 60% growth year over year. And when they put a lot of money in, that's possible, but you also start to see the cracks pretty soon, because you're pouring tons of money into just acquired customers, but you're not doing it profitably. You're not doing it in such a way that's sustainable.
Right.
You have to a certain point and cash out, which is fine. That's definitely a business model, and that's what a lot of businesses have done. But if you want to build something that's going to have longevity, you need to make sure that your fundamentals are right. And that's the part that I think a lot of businesses, either they just don't know how to do it, or it's something that they just don't see as super important until the cracks start showing. And I would love to be able to come into businesses before the cracks start showing and start fixing everything up. But obviously, people need to kind of go through that, figure out what their needs are before they start talking to somebody like me. But it is what it is.
Hey, Cody, I know from working with you that you've built a framework and a model to help these companies in that range, 500,000 to a million grow. But how does it differ from some of the other growth hacks out there? Some of the silver bullets that people claim to be able to deploy to help these companies scale.
That's the thing, is I don't consider it to be a silver bullet. I don't consider it to be a hack. It's just good fundamentals. It's looking at your business and saying, okay, here is what my actual profit margin is. Here's what my expenses are. Here's what I can afford to spend. Here are where people are leaking out. Here are some opportunities to get repeat customers in the door, because obviously it's a lot easier to bring somebody back in for a repeat purchase versus trying to get an entirely new person to purchase. Optimizing things so that you kind of creating a bit of a flywheel where you kind of slow and steady wins the race, instead of coming in and throwing, silver bullets or growth hacks or whatever else. And I'm not saying that stuff like that doesn't happen. It definitely does. Stuff goes viral all the time. You might have a really cool new product or a really cool new thing that blows up. For the most part, businesses that stick around for 5, 10, 20 years, they're the ones that get the fundamentals right. And they're the ones that are constantly monitoring it. They come in, they have a clear goal for everyone on the team. They have a clear goal for the whole company. It comes down from various stakeholders, the founders, CEOs. It trickles down and saying, okay, you know what? This year, tariffs are going to play a big part. So we're hoping to break even, like kind of match growth from last year. But here's a couple different scenarios. If we shrink 20%, here's what this looks like. If we stay stagnant, here's what it looks like. If we're going to grow 10% this year, here's what it looks like. And being able to kind of plan for those different scenarios, and being able to kind of build a forecast that, obviously, revenue forecasting and everything, it's an educated guess at best. But if you can at least have kind of a spectrum where you have, okay, here's our goal, this is where we want to get to, here's the things that need to happen for us to get to those goals, then you're able to kind of start scaling, and you're able to know what's coming. You know what your cash flow looks like. You're never going to be short on payroll, because you know your money's coming back. And especially if you're doing things like putting in some bundling options or raising your free shipping threshold or something like that to get your AOV up, that starts to kind of increase your profitability a little bit. And then all of a sudden you're starting to get a little bit more cash that you can put into paying yourself if you're in that stage, because a lot of founders, when they're at that stage, maybe haven't drawn a salary. So getting it up to the point where they're able to start getting paid and making sure that all their staff is good and they're able to actually scale in a profitable, steady way is crucial, especially if you want to build something long that has some
Right.
longevity.
So when you take on a new brand who's in that range, what do you do in terms of auditing their performance over the last 6, 12, 24 months or whatever? And what patterns and mistakes do you see reoccurring over and over as you look at different companies in different spaces?
Yeah, I like to get really invasive, for lack of a better term. I want to look at everything about the business. I want to look through, as you mentioned at the top, I'm a data wank. So I'm going to look at all your analytics. I'm going to look at all your ads. I'm going to figure out what's worked, what hasn't, what kind of directions, what things you've tested, which channels have worked, which haven't. To look at your website and go, okay, here's where people are leaking out. Look through your email flows, make sure everything's good there. And then start to put together some financial reports and start to look at, like, I've worked with a few founders that were in that range that didn't actually know what their cost of goods sold were on their top 10 selling products.
Right.
Like, you need to know exactly what, down to the penny, what it's going to cost. And you need to keep updating that over time because, like, as we saw with the tariffs in the States, all of a sudden you have to eat 60% extra cost on something coming into the country, or reciprocal tariffs or whatever else is going on. Like, you need to be able to know, okay, well, if my cost of goods sold is $35 on a $100 product, okay, I have to eat a 60% markup. That puts me at 46%. Okay, if I can look at my numbers and say, okay, we can eat that without adjusting our prices. Our profitability maybe goes down a little bit. Great. Or, oh crap, we need to raise our prices in order to compensate. Or being able to just to know, okay, when I sell, let's say $10,000 worth of stuff today, I'm going to put together a plan where you'll be able to see every single day, this is exactly how much profit I'm going to make if we hit these sales goals, and being able to track back to, okay, this is how it's all going to build out. So when I'm done, you basically have a 12-month forecast of, hey, here is what we're hoping to hit. Here is what we can all get behind, and having a framework that your team can go back in and say, okay, we did X amount this day. We did this day. Our cost rose here. So you as a founder, CEO can go back and look at it, whether it be quarterly, monthly, whatever that you decide to look at it. You can say, okay, well, we were 3% over or 2% under, and being able to identify, okay, well, maybe this isn't performing as well as it needs to be, or I need to go beat up my supplier for slightly better margins. And even being able to look at it and say, okay, well, if I have 90-day terms on my payments to my supplier, but with how we're cycling inventory, I can probably sell it all out before I have to pay that off. Then all of a sudden you got a bunch more cash that you can put into whatever else. Having that sort of data and analytics, like, I'm not an accountant by any stretch of the imagination, but having this sort of lens and this sort of visibility into the business is absolutely crucial. And that's where everything builds from. So being able to take that profit loss report, those income statements, those whatever other stuff that you have, compile it into kind of my budgets and down to the day. And I can tell you exactly what to spend which day to get what, and ultimately scale over the course of the year if all goes right.
Interesting. Let's bring up strategy and execution. You made a comment earlier, which agree with. You bring in someone like a VC who maybe wants to see this exponential growth. Clients end up buying the revenue. And so now the question is, how do you balance acquisition versus retention in a growth plan? And so what advice, or how do you look at, your clients and give them direction on that?
Well, it's a bit of education and a bit of kind of being real with people and just being honest and looking at the data. When you're looking at a forecast and when you're looking at things, it becomes pretty apparent, like, okay, well, if your CAC is $130, your AOV's $150, but your repeat purchase rate's 60, 70%. So, over 3 months, you're going to get 3 times your CAC back. So you're profitable. Then all of a sudden you might have to slow down a little bit, because when you're not getting your money back or being profitable on that first purchase, you have to wait a little bit for that money to trickle in. So you might be able to grow a little bit slower, or you need to buy your revenue because over time you're going to get way more back. But just having that insight, knowing, okay, I can scale quick, I can scale slow, I can scale whatever rate we need, or hey, what if the founder's goal is to cash out within the next, let's say 5 years, then okay, maybe you got to go take on debt. Maybe you need to go get an investor. Maybe you need to go talk to a VC to get that money in, because ultimately, if you are buying and you know that people are going to come back and purchase from you again and again, there's nothing wrong with buying customers and spending a little bit more if you know that you're going to get paid back within 30, 60, 90 days.
Right.
You need to know what those numbers are. In a lot of cases, especially when a company is just kind of starting out and starting to grow, a lot of that stuff is organic and it's effortless and it's a lot cheaper. But once you start hitting economies of scale and you start spending more and more, your CPMs start going up. It costs a lot more to start getting customers. You start getting into a more competitor space. Maybe a new competitor pops up and things start to get a lot more difficult. So what worked 2 years, 1 year, 3 years ago doesn't work anymore. And you have to be able to pivot and know how you can pivot and what you need to do to get there.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, Cody, again, in terms of just looking at these, the brands we're talking about and the revenue range we're talking about, what we've seen is they often lack visibility into the touch points that work together in the user journey to actually drive revenue. So which KPIs do you look at? What do you recommend brands do in terms of tracking that type of data on a regular basis, be that daily, weekly, etc.?
Yeah, honestly, AdAmplify's like user touchpoint thing is one of my go-tos. That one's phenomenal for being able to get an idea of how many touch points, what people are interacting with, how they're moving through your funnel. But I saw a pretty famous quote the other day. I can't remember who it was from, but they said, in marketing, 95% of what you do doesn't show up on a balance sheet. And especially in the world of e-com and with SaaS and everything else, that's never been more true. And with the rise of AI search and with everything else, like there's just so many different pieces that you need to be investing in and working on and making sure that you're accounting for. That's not just buying customers, it's investing in your website to make sure it's nice and fast. And Google's actually going to rank you, because if your page doesn't load or loads like a slug or has a lot of people bouncing off of it, Google obviously tanks your SEO ratings. So, and then obviously now with the rise of AI search, optimizing your sites for that, like there's just so much stuff that you need to be considering and you need to be doing, that it gets really complicated over time. And I think that's the part that a lot of people underestimate, is how much investment, especially when you're in that stage, to build a good foundation to build off of, that you need to do. Like getting revenue, getting customers in the door is great, but if you get a $500,000 investment to go through, if it was me, I'd be putting 25, 30% of that just into infrastructure and systems before I even start spending on ads, because that's going to pay off way bigger long term than it will just spending that whole 500,000 on customers initially.
Oh, that's great advice. And you've helped out so many smaller brands, larger brands as well. Just wondering, do you have any examples or an example where just better visibility, better, really better understanding of the metrics of their business has changed the growth trajectory and given them some real punch?
Yeah, there's been a few clients I've worked with that kind of fell into that range. Um, One in particular, basically, yeah, we didn't really have any visibility into, like, they assumed their cost of goods sold was around like 35%. They didn't actually know. They just kind of gave me that number. So went back, actually ran the numbers, did everything, and it turns out it was closer to 42%. So all of a sudden, then we had to go back and start adjusting budgets, start adjusting everything. We started getting really creative with how we were marketing, flipped doing a lot more influencer marketing, because obviously it was a little bit cheaper than buying customers through Facebook or Instagram. And it was a product that was very visual and very easy to kind of market that way. And actually started going to some traditional print media because it was a little bit more effective to get more eyeballs. And it took a while. It took kind of 3 or 4 months. We still kept puttering away, but it started just to take off, that brand awareness, that growth. And once it started, it didn't really stop. And the AOV shot up by, I think it was about 15, 16% with some changes that we made. We added in some bundles, we added in a few things like that to kind of jack that up. And As soon as those hit, it offset what the actual cost of goods sold was. And all of a sudden, the founder's sitting there on a 10% profit margin, not knowing what to do with themselves. They're able to put that into growth and paying themselves for the first time in a couple of years. So
All those tough
it's,
problems, eh?
yeah, so it's really crucial to have that visibility. And especially when you're a new founder, when you're just starting up, like if you have a background in finance, amazing, you know how to do all this stuff. But a lot of this stuff I've had to pick up over the last couple of years because my background is obviously in marketing. I'm the guy that accountants hate because I'm always wanting to spend more and more and more. But since COVID and since everything else, I've put a lot of effort into educating myself about finances and how all this stuff works so that I can actually be a better marketer. Because if I'm coming in and saying, hey, I want to spend 40% of revenue on marketing and to try and grow this company with no factual basis to back it up, who's going to give me that money? But if I come in and say, hey, based on this, based on your LTV, based on payback periods, based on all of this, and taking in mind your growth goals, okay, here is exactly how much we need to be spending on which channel based on the analytics. So I can tell you exactly, here's how we grow over the next 6, 8, 12 months.
Okay, great stuff.
Well, let's just talk about that founder for a moment. So often we see them wearing, and we've experienced it ourselves,
Yeah.
wearing too many hats. And so, what advice would you give them in terms of where to think about team structure or where to invest in resources? You kind of hinted a minute ago about, it's not about just spending money on ads and that, but there's a balance within a company.
Um, Biggest one for me is knowing what your strengths are and focusing on it. So if you're a founder that has a background in finance or has a background in tech or programming or marketing or whatever, that's your strength. Stick to it and bring in people that are better than you in these other things. Like as a CEO, you're going to naturally become an all-rounder over time. You're going to have your fingers in every piece, but making sure that you can bring in people that you trust, that are aligned with your vision for where you want to go and have the expertise to get you there will help you a lot with letting go, because that is the biggest thing that I see. And I'm sure you guys see it as well, is a founder say they were a one-man show or one-woman show to get to 500,000 to a million, and they're starting to hire people and having that trust to let somebody else do it, even if it may not be as good as they're able to do it if they think, or they can't do it as fast. Like letting go, letting people help, letting people execute your vision, and starting to focus a little bit more on the view from 30,000 feet instead of the view from right down at sea level is the
Yeah,
biggest change. And that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of founders struggle with, because it does require a lot of trust and it requires a lot of letting go of control. And for a lot of CEOs and a lot of founders, that is the trickiest part. But the most successful ones are the ones that are able to let go and are able to pass off to other people, are able to hire a really great team to help them. They listen to them, they support them, they give the strategic vision and the goal, and here's what we need to hit. They hold people accountable if they don't hit the certain goals. But ultimately, they're the ones that are steering the ship. It's up to them to hire the right people to paddle it in the right direction and make sure that they get there.
yeah, and just before they hit that critical point of hiring those resources, I find a lot of them are chasing shiny objects, and how do they balance their intuition or their gut versus you being a data wank, data-driven decision making, right? What would you? I mean, you made a statement to them. What would it be?
Yeah, it's tricky. I suffer from that as well. Especially in this day and age, there's so many new AI tools and new things popping up. There's always new software, there's always new things to test. And I enjoy sitting in on demos for new tools. I've come across a few really cool ones over the last few years, AdAmplify included, that I've stuck with and definitely wanted to use and have made great use of. But yeah, it's tricky trying to figure out where to focus your attention and what's the biggest red flag. But being a bit of a data wank can help, because if you're looking at your P&L and you say, okay, why did my shipping costs spike this month? and being able to go back and say, okay, well, maybe I need to get a new 3PL, or hey, something happened, or hey, why is there a spike in warranty claims last month? Well, manufacturer screwed something up. That's going to have a bigger impact because you go back to your manufacturer and say, hey, you guys broke a bunch of stuff. Then all
Right.
of a sudden you get a bunch of cash in that you can use for other things. Or if your shippers are screwing you, being able to go back and say, okay, here is the pricing that we need, negotiate, get it down, and then all of a sudden you're starting to save way more money than you would make than if you were to sit down and say, let's do 3 hours of ad optimization instead of your team.
Right.
Going back and saving 20 grand in cash from a shipper is going to have a way bigger impact on your bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So letting go of the little things and focusing just on the big things and the things that are actually going to move the needle, that's what a CEO's job is.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
passing that off to everyone else, the team that you trust, to be able to say, okay, I have a CEO. Let's say you have a COO for a reason. They're the ones that are dealing with the shipping. And if they're not, then you're holding them accountable and you're looking at the statements and going, hey, why is our shipping so much higher for the last quarter? And being
Right.
able to backtrack and figure it out.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we need to go and address this. Or, hey, here's a really cool partnership opportunity.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, no,
And
some great advice there in terms of the CEO's role. Um, I think the one final takeaway maybe we can grab from you is what should a founder start doing tomorrow? And does that change at that sort of 250, $500 million level? I mean, but you know, any insights there?
Well, the fun thing with ads and everything else is the fundamentals of running ads on Meta, Google, whatever, are exactly the same if you're running it for a, let's say, $200 a month campaign or a $200 million a month campaign. It's just segmentation, knowing your customers, and testing different messaging, different targeting, different
Right.
whatever. It's just economies of scale. Like, obviously, you're spending way more money on a daily basis on the $200 million account than you are on the $200 a day accounts. A lot of the stuff and a lot of the things that happen, it's just economies of scale. Bigger companies obviously have different issues. And once you get bigger, yeah, you run into all sorts of other issues. And we've seen a lot of companies running into that over the last couple of years where they thought the COVID days were never going to end, bought way too much inventory, and they've been sitting on $5-6 million in cash that's been tied up in a warehouse that they haven't been able to sell. And all of a sudden they're starting to go bankrupt. They're starting to go whatever else. They took on way too much debt. So I think the one thing that I would suggest to founders, if they want to get up, is just focus on the fundamentals. Just talk to an incubator, talk to somebody like me, talk to a business coach. Just make sure that your finances are set. You know exactly what your costs are for absolutely everything. You know what your payback periods are. You know exactly what your numbers are, so you know what you can handle, what points you need to reach in order to hire which roles. Let's say you're at $500,000, or maybe able to pull a bit of a salary. Okay, do I roll this salary into, say, a operations person, to a marketer? Do I hire an agency? What do I do to help scale? Because you can only do so much in a day. So knowing what you can afford, what you need, and what your path forward are, absolutely crucial. So
Yeah.
nailing that and getting that lined up, I think, would be the number one thing I would do tomorrow if I was a founder.
Right.
great. Yeah. Thank you for that, Cody. So I think we're kind of running out of time here, but I think it's important for any of our listeners who are listening to the podcast or watching it and want to hear more from you, Cody. We'll put your contact info in the show in the notes. But can you share where listeners can connect with you and learn more about your framework?
Easiest one's on LinkedIn, or at my website, scaleupdigital.ca.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Well, thanks so much, Cody. Our regular listeners know we're pretty passionate about providing clear, actionable data and uncovering hidden attribution and profitability insights. So, really appreciate you joining us. I think your framework really complements and has complemented that focus over the years. So, yeah, if somebody's looking for the type of services and advice that Cody can offer, we recommend him very heartily.
Thank you
So,
very
Well,
much.
and thanks.
thanks, Cody.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me, guys.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.